My man Tanjiro and his gang had defeated the Upper Moon Six, Daki and Gyataro in the Entertainment District. The Sound Hashira, Tenjin Uzi, lost his arm during his battle and has to retire, but he still has 3 wives, which is kind of unfair. Anyway, without any further ado, let's dive into the Swordsmith Village arc. Episode 1. Following their intense battle against Daki and Gyataro, Tanjiro and the others are found by the Kikuchi. The Demonslayers have finally managed to kill an upper-ranked demon after 100 long years and are optimistic about the future. Meanwhile, Muzan immediately summons the remaining Upper Moons, including Akaza, Doma, and Kokishibo. Before the meeting begins, Akaza and Domo have a small scuffle, which gets resolved by Kokishibo as Akaza pisses himself after seeing him. Just then, Muzan also appears at the spot and admonishes the Upper Moons for not getting rid of the Ubuyashiki family, or finding the Blue Spider Lily. To calm down the Demon Lord, Gyoko reveals some information regarding the Swordsmith Village, and is sent on a joint mission alongside Hantenju. Akaza also vows to kill Kokishibo, even though he's a pathetic loser. With all of this going on, Tanjiro proceeds with his rehabilitation while Inosuke and Zenitsu are sent on individual missions. He then receives intel that his swordsmith Haganazuka has refused to forge him a new sword, and with no other option left, Tanjiro has to visit the Swordsmith Village himself to meet with Haganazuka and beg him to forge his sword. Alongside Nezuko, Tanjiro reaches the village even without knowing its exact location, because it is hidden for a reason. Tanjiro then meets up with the village chief Tekken Tekakawahara, who reassures him that he'll convince Haganazuka to forge him a sword. Following this, Tanjiro comes across the love Hashira, Mitsuri, at the hot springs, who has some abandonment issues and complains about someone ignoring her. Upon reaching the hot springs, he encounters the young brother of Wind Hashira, Jinya Shinizugawa, who had passed the Demonslayer selection exam alongside Tanjiro. Tanjiro keeps pestering him, which makes Ginya believe that Tanjiro is a pathetic loser, and he brushes him off. Later on, Mitsuri informs Tanjiro about a secret weapon that might make him stronger, and in search of that weapon, he comes across the Mist Hashira, who is arguing with someone. After carefully examining the situation, Tanjiro notices that he is actually arguing with a young swordsmith, and alongside is the man that appears in his dream. Episode 2. Muchiro keeps threatening the young swordsmith, and as Tanjiro attempts to protect him, he gets folded by Muchiro, who knocks him unconscious. After Tanjiro wakes up, the young swordsmith named Katetsu explains that he was actually protecting a mechanical doll that was built by his ancestors over 300 years ago. He further explains that this doll is his only heirloom to pass down since he's an orphan. Hearing all this, Tanjiro agrees to protect the doll, but upon reaching it, they notice that Hachiro has completely violated the doll. After examining it, Katetsu concludes that the doll is still functional, and urges Tanjiro to train with it to beat the arrogant brat. Katetsu is so damn determined in training Tanjiro that he didn't even give him food and even water when he failed to complete his tasks. He even mocks him, stating that he's just an ugly, pathetic loser who can't even fight a mere doll. Eventually, Tanjiro gets exhausted from the hellish training and falls unconscious. In his dream, he visualizes himself in the afterlife, where he comes across a mysterious stone in the Sanzu River. Surprisingly, this stone allows him to detect attacks instinctively and dodge them as well. With this newfound ability, Tanjiro finally manages to land a blow on the doll and get some food. With this, the training proceeds and Tanjiro gets better at reading the doll's movements until one day, he accidentally breaks the doll's head. Much to their surprise, a sword was hidden inside the doll. Episode 3. Katetsu suggests that Tanjiro uses this sword, and they get way too excited about this. However, much to their disappointment, the sword was quite tarnished, which makes sense because it is 300 years old. Just then, a muscular guy appears out of nowhere, and it turns out it is Haganazuka, who has turned into a Chad. He takes the sword away from him, intending to restore it. Following this, Tanjiro once again comes across Ginya and attempts to befriend him, only to get mocked again. He also notices that Ginya has regrown his lost tooth. Concurrently, Hantenju and Gyoko have made their way to the Swordsmith Village as Hantenju encounters Tanjiro and Muchiro. As soon as Hantenju enters the room, Muchiro beheads him, but the demon splits into two. One of them, Karaku, blasts Muchiro away with his wind-based Uchiwa, and the other, Sakido, electrocutes Tanjiro and Nezuko. Just then, Ginya also appears at the spot and beheads the demons using his American shotgun and a Nichiren katana, which results in the demons splitting once again. With this, there are now 4 demons up against Tanjiro, Nezuka, and Ginya. The winged demon Erogi carries Tanjiro away from the group and blasts his ear with white girl music. Sonic Shriek. Meanwhile, Nezuko and Ginya are up against another demon named Ayetsu. With all of this going on, Muchiro, who had been smashed away, rushes back towards them. On his way, he comes across Katetsu, who is under attack by a weird fish monster. He wants to ignore him since he's trash, and his life is not that important, but he remembers Tanjiro's word about how saving people would eventually help him and decides to save Katetsu. Episode 4. Even though Muchiro beheads the fish monster, it doesn't die unless he slices the face on its back. After this, Kotetsu literally begs him to save Haganazuka and another swordsmith named Kanamori. Hearing all this, Muchiro refuses to accompany him, stating that he has to protect the village. Just then, he remembers Kagaya's words about trivial events triggering his lost memories to return. With this in mind, Muchiro decides to accompany Kotetsu to save the swordsmith. Meanwhile, Tanjiro has determined that the 4 demons represent emotions, including rage, joy, pleasure, and sorrow. He also discovers that their tongues are their weak points, and slashing them would paralyze them for a while. Meanwhile, Genya and Nezuko are up against Sakito, Karaku, and Ayetsu, who are in complete control of this battle. Suddenly, they notice that Genya is inhumanely resistant to normally fatal wounds. Nezuko, on the other hand, frees himself from Karaku's grip and burns him. She then uses his own Uchiwa against him. Just then, Sakito comes to his rescue and immobilizes Nezuko using his Kakara. Concurrently, Tanjiro is still stuck with Yorogi and cannot figure out a way to get back. With no other option, Tanjiro uses Yorogi's flying ability and momentum to reach Nezuko and Genya. He also avoids Sakito's attack using Yorogi's feet because they cannot conduct electricity owing to the fact that they share the same cells. Tanjiro then manages to free Nezuko, but still gets pinned to the ground by Karaku's Uchiwa. With all of this going on, the fish monsters have ambushed the swordsmith village, and Mitsuri, who had returned from the village, is heading back to save everyone. Episode 5. As Muchiro saves Kanamori from a fish monster, he takes him to his work shed for the new katana. Approaching the shed, Muchiro notices that something is off, and it turns out Gyoko is already waiting for them there. Meanwhile, Mitsuri also arrives at the village and gets rid of all the fish monsters with her weird whip-like katana. She also saves the village chief Tekken from a massive fish monster with her love breathing. Nezuko and Tanjiro, on the other hand, attempt to escape with their last bit of remaining strength, with the demons chasing them. Karaku eventually blows them away, and Nezuko gets trapped beneath debris. For some reason, she then grabs Tanjiro's sword and smears it in blood. Meanwhile, Muchiro ambushes Gyoko, only to discover that he can create new vases and teleport between them to avoid getting slashed. He also brings forth merged dead bodies of Swordsmith and presents them as his art. Seeing that Muchiro is dodging his attacks rather easily, Gyoko targets Kotetsu and Kanamori to distract him, and eventually succeeds as Muchiro gets struck by multiple poisonous needles. He then gets trapped inside Gyoko's watery vase, which will suffocate him to death and can't be broken from inside. With all of this going on, Nezuko utilizes her blood demon art to burn Tanjiro's katana into bright red, as suddenly Sakito gets a random flashback of Muzan's memories and realizes that this katana resembles that of the swordsman that almost folded Muzan. With this, Tanjiro once again awakens the Demonslayer mark and beheads Yorogi, Karaku, and Sakito. He also notices that Genya has managed to behead Ayetsu and has now assumed the appearance of a demon for some reason. Episode 6. Tanjiro discovers that the demons are still alive despite being beheaded at the same moment. Following thorough consideration, he realizes that there must be a 5th demon hiding somewhere and informs Genya about it. Genya fiercely displays his jealousy and proclaims that he too would vanquish an upper-ranked demon, to which Tanjiro reacts positively. He frees Nezuko and orders her to accompany Genya once the demons have healed. Now that the sulfur smell from the hot springs has vanished, Tanjiro can now use his sense of smell to locate the demon. He informs Genya regarding the demon's exact location while fending off the other 4. Genya even manages to find the Chibi Hatenju, but fails to behead him because he's a weakling himself. Just then, Sakito strikes Genya from behind. Genya, realizing he is going to die, recalls his youth, when he and his family were routinely abused by his good-for-nothing father, who was subsequently slain. Tsunemi went out one night to search for their mother, who had failed to get home. As Genya was looking after his siblings and reassuring them that Tsunemi and their mother would soon return, a demon soon entered their home, killing all 5 of Genya's younger siblings, but was defeated by Tsunemi. That morning, he discovered Tsunemi standing in front of their mother's body, ignorant that she was the demon, and labeled him a murderer in his anguish. Genya laments his death without apologizing to Tsunemi, but Tanjiro saves him by assaulting Sakito. After Genya protects him from Ayetsu's strike, Tanjiro pursues Hentenju himself. Episode 7. Tanjiro manifests Hinakami Kagura to slash Hentenju's neck, and just then, he notices an overwhelming being standing behind him who is actually Hentenju's manifested hatred, named Zohakuten. Tanjiro gets saved by Nezuko and Genya, but it is revealed that Zohakuten's blood demon art is to summon massive wooden dragons. It is also revealed that Zohakuten is actually Sakito, who has consumed Ayetsu, Karaku, and Yorogi. He also traps Hentenju inside a burrow and denounces the Demonslayers for harming such a powerless creature, which infuriates Tanjiro to the extent that he openly challenges an upper moon. Meanwhile, Muchiro is still trapped inside that water bubble created by Gyoko. He attempts to break through using his remaining strength, but fails, and at this point, there is nothing else he can do. Just as he is about to give up, he envisions Tanjiro standing in front of him and reassuring him that someone will come to help him. Gyoko, on the other hand, enters the shed and comes across Hotaru, who is polishing Tanjiro's katana and is so damn immersed in his work that he doesn't even notice Gyoko. This infuriates him, and he attacks Hotaru to divert his attention. But much to his surprise, Hotaru doesn't even flinch. Gyoko even destroys his mask, and it turns out Hotaru is actually a handsome stud. In the meantime, Kotetsu appears out of nowhere and attempts to break free Muchiro from the prison, and gets attacked by a small demon who stabs him at a vital point. Seeing all this, Muchiro urges Kotetsu to escape, stating that he's just a pathetic loser who cannot do anything. But despite all this, Kotetsu blows some air bubbles into the water bubble that would allow Muchiro to use his breathing technique. Just then, Muchiro also realizes that the reason he envisioned Tanjiro is because his eye color resembles that of his father. He also breaks through the water prison using Mist Breathing's second form, 8-layered mist. Episode 8. Even though Muchiro has released himself, his body is still numb from the poison and he is in no shape to take on an upper rank. Just then, he envisions his father encouraging him, and with this, he regains all his lost memories. Muchiro's father was a woodcutter who was a hardworking and sincere person. As Muchiro's mother fell severely ill, his father had to venture outside to get medicinal herbs in a storm and lost his life. That night, Muchiro lost both his mother and father. At that point, all he had was his twin brother Yuichiro, who became cold and distant from him. He believed that compassion does nothing good and that helping others won't help you in the long run. He believed that their father died because he went outside to help their mother without thinking about himself, and the words of such a man cannot be trusted. One day, they are approached by Kagaya's wife, Amani, who tells them about their past and how they are related to an ancient swordsman. She wants to recruit them to the Demonslayer's corps, but Yuichiro refuses, stating that they are bound to die a worthless death like their parents. He keeps insulting Amani and the story progresses. One night, their house gets ambushed by a demon who gravely injured Yuichiro. This enrages Muchiro, and he beats the living out of him, but fails to save his brother and witnesses his final moments right before his eyes. Even during his final moments, Yuichiro apologizes to Muchiro and begs God to save him because he is a good person unlike him. These memories awaken something inside Muchiro as mysterious marks appear on his face. The small fries get folded by him in mere seconds and he saves Kotetsu. In the meantime, Gyoko is still enraged by Hotaru's determination and decides to kill them. Just then, Muchiro appears out of nowhere and ambushes Gyoko, who is shocked to see him alive. He also notices the marks on his face and comments on how they resemble the ones on Tanjiro. He then attacks relentlessly to get rid of him, but fails to do shit. At this point, Muchiro has also acquired the new sword forged by Kanamori, which makes Muchiro remember Mr. Tetsuito, who had forged his first sword. Now that Muchiro has regained his memories, his swordsmanship has skyrocketed. Gyoko is failing to keep up with his sword and his insults as well. Episode 9. The battle continues as Gyoko keeps getting roasted by Muchiro. He even utilizes his ultimate technique to immerse Muchiro in deadly poison, but fails. Realizing that he stands no chance against Muchiro, Gyoko reveals his true merman-like form. According to him, only 3 have witnessed his true form, and none of them have survived to tell the tale. Gyoko tries his best to make a comeback as Muchiro keeps mocking him. Muchiro then recalls the time when he witnessed his brother's agonizing death and how Amani saved him. From that point forward, he immersed himself in relentless training to rid this world of demons, with his overwhelming rage pushing him forward. With no other option left, Gyoko utilizes his blood demon art, Killer Fish Scales, to overwhelm Muchiro but fails to land a single blow. Just then, Muchiro utilizes Mist Breathing's 7th form, Obscuring Clouds. The entire area gets covered in mist, and Muchiro severs Gyoko's ugly, pathetic head. With this, the Mist Hashira has managed to defeat the upper rank 5, as the mark on his face also vanishes. Even though he wants to rejoin Tanjiro and the others, his body reels from exhaustion and he eventually falls unconscious. Kanamori and Kotetsu take care of him, but the surprising thing here is that Kotetsu survived that deadly attack, owing to Rengoku's Tsuba Tanjiro had given him. Muchiro also envisions his dead family and starts crying after witnessing them again. Meanwhile, Tanjiro and the others are up against the Hakuten, but even their combined efforts are no match for his overwhelming power. Tanjiro gets devoured by one of the dragons in an attempt to save Nezuko, and just as he's about to get crushed, Mitsuri appears at the spot and saves him. Episode 10. With her love breathing, Mitsuri absolutely obliterates the dragon and saves Tanjiro. Her battle against the Hakuten proceeds as she effortlessly dodges all his attacks. As she's about to slash its head, Tanjiro reveals that the actual body is hidden somewhere else. Despite his warning, Mitsuri gets trapped in Hakuten's scheme and gets stunned at point blank. As he is about to pulverize her, Mitsuri reminisces about her past when she got rejected by a guy for her hair color and her muscular build. Even as a child, Mitsuri possessed immense physical prowess, enough to carry a 33-pound stone. She even had a massive appetite and could even beat adults in arm wrestling. Growing up, she realized that she was quite different from other girls and used to wonder if she would ever get married. Later on, as her prospective marriage got called off, Mitsuri decided to change her entire appearance and even dyed her hair black. She eventually comes across a man who wants to marry her, but the thought that she'd have to spend her entire life pretending to be someone she's not scared her. Just then, she regains consciousness as Tanjiro, Nezuko, and Genya save her from Hakuten and take her away. She apologizes for her shortcomings as a Hashira and engages Hakuten in combat. Mitsuri also remembers the time when the Demonslayer Corps recognized her for who she actually is, which made her shed tears of joy. She also remembers Aguro giving her socks as a gift and promises to give her new socks if they get ripped. All this time, Mitsuri has been hiding her true potential, fearing that people might not like her. However, now she wants to embrace her true self and protect the people she loves. During the battle, Hakuten notices that Mitsuri has also awakened the Demon Slayer mark on her neck, which has further boosted her already overwhelming physical abilities. With no other option left, he has to focus all his efforts on Mitsuri and reveals Hantenju's burrow in the process. In the meantime, Tanjiro, Nezuko, and Genya search for Hantenju's real body. It is revealed that Genya has been consuming demons all this time to gain their abilities to some extent. Despite their combined efforts, Hantenju manages to escape once again. Episode 11. Tanjiro keeps following Hantenju but fails to catch up. At this point, his resentment for demons is overwhelming as he remembers everything they have done. Suddenly, Tanjiro remembers Zenitsu's words regarding thunder breathing and how it focuses on legs. Keeping this in mind, Tanjiro uses thunder breathing to approach Hantenju, but Yarami, the demon, expresses his wrath. Genya and Nezuko assault him, but Yarami and his siblings tumble down a cliff. Despite losing its arms, it keeps running, looking for humans to replenish its strength. Just then, Muichiro appears out of nowhere and hurls his sword towards Tanjiro, while Hotaru attempts to kill him for interrupting his work. Using Muichiro's antique sword, Tanjiro decapitates Yarami but fails to slay Hantenju. While the day breaks, Nezuko begins to burn, but she eventually signals for him to destroy the demon. He finds Hantenju hidden inside Yarami's heart and exposes him to sunlight. As he is murdered, he relives his past while protecting Mitsuri as the Hakuten disintegrates. Tanjiro mourns Nezuko's death but realizes that she is no longer burning. Muzan learns from Hantenju's recollections that swallowing Nezuko will allow him to accomplish his goal of immortality. Once a sickly young man from the Heian period, he was enraged by his lack of recovery and murdered his doctor, only to discover later that his final treatment had improved his physical powers and rescued him, but had left him unable to walk in sunlight. After failing to locate the treatment's last component, the blue spider lily, he turned to producing demons, in the hopes that one would vanquish the sun. In the aftermath, Muichiro praises Tanjiro for assisting him in regaining his identity, and Mitsuri hugs them all in celebration of their survival. The swordsmiths congratulate Tanjiro on saving them as he departs the village. And that's it, folks. I hope you enjoyed this recap. I'm pretty sure all of you are looking forward to the next season. Till then, sayonara.